Good evening. Leading our news tonight, the recent comments by one member of the Niue Chamber of Commerce Council, Mrs. Patricia Hunter, to Radio New Zealand about the imbalanced marketing of accommodation providers is being called unjust by the Tourism Office. Niue Tourism Director Hayden Porter said the office does most of the marketing for Niue, and he is disappointed Mrs. Hunter's comment.
To be fair, I was a little concerned with those comments. One, I felt they were a little bit unjust and unqualified. And the reason I say that is the smaller operators by default benefit from everyone succeeding. And there's a lot of opportunities for those smaller operators as well to take advantage of the marketing that we do. For instance, the website, the booking system, etc. We've conducted training, and actually Patricia's a really perfect example I can use. We've conducted training on the booking systems. We've talked about opportunities on how the properties can be marketed effectively, because they do tend to have a bit less opportunity by default because of how they're structured. They're one unit properties or whatever, so travel agents tend not to want to book them because there are quality concern issues, and they're used to dealing with bigger operators. They've been and seen the sites, etc. But just going back to Patricia's comments, perfect example. In February, we actually sent her an entire list of all the things that we could do. We spent numerous hours, in fact, in setting up a couple of her properties on the site, and to this date, they aren't actually turned on. So we haven't had a response to that, although there's an opportunity there to really market it. I think the other thing to think about is when everyone does well, everyone does well. And June this month is a perfect example of that. Last year in June, we had a load on the aircraft, arrivals about 62%. This year, we're into the high 80s in terms of percentage. Now what that equates to is about 310 extra arrivals just for the month of June. It's a 75% increase in terms of real numbers onto the island. That's 2 extra full plane loads that have arrived in June alone. And the interesting thing is we haven't added any accommodation through that period. And June's traditionally one of those sort of touch and go months, and we've really focused on making it into a high period so that everyone can benefit.
He said operators need to understand consumers have preference of accommodations when they book.
Reality is the consumer gets to choose where they stay, and if they don't have the ability to see what is available, i.e. it's not on the website, the booking system's not turned on, which are the key marketing tools for the smaller operators, then they can't choose because they don't know about it. They also, one of our big targets is ensuring that we have a quality traveller coming here, ones that spend money and want to spend money, and they get to choose where they want to stay. So if they have concerns over quality, then they will choose something and be happy to pay for something of a higher quality. They come with certain expectations, and if they can't be provided potentially by the smaller operators, then they will choose somewhere else. And saying that, displacement business is also great business for smaller operators. So if the bigger operators are busy, and they're flat out till October. A number of them are fully booked until October. And by larger operators, I mean 5 rooms or 4 rooms or more, really, 3 rooms or more. So in terms of a lion's share, they do see more business because they have the relationship with travel agents and so on. But they have taken time to develop those, and we help develop those for them as well. But they also have trust. The travel agents have trust in that product to be able to deliver for the tourists. And June's a great example. We're miles up. Restaurants are thriving. I've seen 20 tourists walk past here just while we've been talking. The operators are busy, and that's the feedback in general. So really in response to disappointing comments, There are things that are there that can be taken advantage of, but at the end of the day, it's totally up to the operator whether they want to take advantage of that. But we're here to help. We want to see everyone do well. And that ranges not just accommodation operators, rental car operators, huge business for Niue. The food and beverage outlets, huge business for Niue. So it's not all about accommodation either.
Mrs. Patricia Hunter said her comments are fair. Marketing the whole industry needs more interaction between businesses and those who do the marketing, and that is lacking at present. The money used to market the industry is public money and should dispense evenly to help all businesses, not just the chosen few. When asked if it's the quality of the product and the service provided that discouraged customers, Mrs. Hunter said it is hard to work to upgrade small properties because of the high cost of materials, but there must be an understanding with those who market Niue that there are visitors who want budget accommodations, and that must be included in the promotions. The unrest in the community of Hikutavake appears to continue on, with reports of the village church building being closed for over a month now. Hikutavake has been plagued with internal conflicts stemming from a string of arsons since May 2011 following the elections. However, the issues surrounding the lockout are uncertain, but some members of the congregation are considering legal action. According to a deacon within the Hikutavake Ecclesia, the reason for closing the church was to avoid any further conflicts within the village trickling into the church. The lay preacher for the village has also been advised by the main church body on the island, the Ecclesia Niue, that his services were no longer required and a replacement is being sourced to hopefully provide some spiritual guidance for the community that it may be able to return to some resemblance of normality. The Ecclesia Niue Committee is also in the process of meeting with families to address the complex issues and find a solution before the church can be reopened. The owner of a vanilla exporting company on the island says there's a shortage of producers, but former growers who took part in a government scheme that failed are reluctant to start farming the crop again. Stanley Coloni of Niue Vanilla International is one of the participants in the inaugural 3-day Pacific Trade Expo in Fiji, and he spoke to Radio New Zealand. He says his company sells its certified organic vanilla to Europe, the United States, Australia and New Zealand, and is working on a deal with Japan. Mr. Coloni says the business is flourishing, but one of the issues with expansion is increasing the number of suppliers. He says that they've been stung before. The government pushed them to put in plantations, and most people did. They started up new plantation and it was going in full production, but once they had the beans, no one was buying it. Stanley Coloni says his company pays suppliers for beans before processing them, so the farmers know they're always going to get their money. The HMNZS Otago has been in the Pacific conducting maritime patrols. The Otago was tasked with a wide range of activities, including surveillance, patrol, logistics and stores transport. The deployment demonstrates the Navy's ability to undertake regular, long-duration security and resource protection and diplomatic missions into the Pacific to support the Pacific Island nations to protect their own security and resources. The naval frigate firstly went to Samoa, then to the Cook Islands before heading to Niue. The Otago was delayed whilst in the Cook Islands due to an accident involving one of the crew, a 22-year-old young sailor, able seaman combat specialist William Delamere, who sadly passed away. And for the past few days, the HMNZS Otago was assisting with marine surveillance in Niue waters, with Niue Fisheries Enforcement Officer Launoa Ngataua on board coordinating patrols. The naval frigate made a brief stopover yesterday to drop off Niue's Fisheries Enforcement Officer before continuing with patrol operations around the Pacific, expecting to return to the Devonport Naval Base in August. And to end our news bulletin, tomorrow, Niue's donation to the Fiji Relief Appeal will be delivered when Honourable Premier and his delegation head for the FEM meeting. Organisers of the appeal said they are extremely happy with the people who rang and donated over $5,000 during the radio appeal. New government has also topped up the funds to reach $10,000. Organisers said they want to say thank you and vinaka vakalevu to people for their kind hearts. And that concludes our news bulletin for tonight. We do hope that you have an enjoyable weekend ahead and join us again next week.